Chapter 14. One of the things that werewolves were gifted as an alpha species was stealth. They could glide through a forest, and no one would hear them. Even entire armies could make their way through a territory in complete silence. One who listened to the humming sound of the beetle and simply followed it. Eventually, they came to a clearing where the forest ended and the beach began. In between was a grass-covered hill, and he crawled to the ridgeline and looked down at the sea dragon's camp. As he looked down, he could see a movement in the darkness, though it was not clear that it was a sea dragon. He squinted, trying to see as clearly as possible, but the light was too dim and the distance too far. He continued to crawl. His body ached, and he knew he was tired and hungry. But Loon would have wanted him to confront these creatures who likely killed her, even if by accident. As he came closer, he noticed the ground had become stone, and the pattern was unmistakable. It had been placed not by nature, but by creatures of the sea. The moment his feet touched the stone, there was a sound, not loud, but a clear tone that he almost couldn't hear, like a ringing in his ear. He stopped in his tracks. Suddenly, a dizziness came over his head and his entire body. He had no choice but to sit down, but as he did, he lost consciousness and crumpled to the ground like a puppet cut from its strings. One, who opened his eyes slowly. He wasn't sure how much time had passed or even where he was. He was surrounded by a wall of stone on all sides. The stones were not cemented together, and he could see flickers of firelight through the open seams of the large stones. He half stood, scuttled to the wall, and looked through a small crack between the stones. There they were, sea dragons, maybe 3 of them, possibly more. He wasn't sure. He looked at the stone room he was in and wondered if there was a door. He even thought about pushing the wall down, but if they were holding him as a prisoner, surely the walls would not succumb to a simple push.
"Do you like fish?"
Came a voice from behind him. It sounded like Alter's voice, again, inside his mind.
To eat?
One who whispered.
"Yes, you're hungry, aren't you?"
Alter said. One who was conflicted and let out a long sigh.
Will they meet with me or not?
"They will, but they want you to stay in here while we talk. Okay, I can bring you some food so your hunger pangs are not so strong. It's fresh fish."
I will not eat.
One who replied.
Ask them why they killed my wife.
"I will not ask that."
So you're not a translator after all, are you? You're a censor.
"The sea dragons are not as direct as you. If I start the conversation with that question, they will not continue the conversation. I am not a censor. I am a diplomatic translator."
There was a light that pulsed inside his stone-walled room. It slowly morphed into a form, and the antlers were the first certainty that it was Alter.
"I will introduce you first, and then they will return your introduction. They are rather formal in their ways, so you will have to be patient with your questions. They have allowed you 3 questions, and when you have reached your quota, they will end the conversation, and you will be free to go."
3 questions?
As I just said, they are rather formal creatures, and 3 is a sacred number for them. As you are their guest, they set the rules, and I cannot negotiate those rules on their home turf.
Well, technically, as we see it, they're on our home turf, so their rules don't apply.
He let his anger seep into the room unabated. Alter walked to a door in the back of the room, opened it, and left without another word. One who could hear high-frequency, sonar-like sounds echoing in and around the stone walls of his apparent prison cell. The door opened a minute later and Alter entered.
"They honor your title,"
she began as she sat down.
"However, they are not here to apologize or defend themselves. In addition to Adam and Eve—"
That's really their names?
One who interrupted sarcastically.
"There is nothing in their language that translates into your language. Their real names you would find unpronounceable. I have bestowed names and words to everything they convey to me as accurately as I can. I am being patient with you only because I know what you have just gone through. But you will need to listen, for what is to come will be a revelation to you. Are you ready?
One, who looked puzzled and squinted his eyes.
For what?
Alter smiled, a sign that she was ignoring his question.
They have a sea dragon who is their son and can only stay for a short time. His name is unimportant, but his story is not. He was here during the last full moon with his sister, exploring the strange world that their parents adopted. Members of your tribe attacked them. Their son managed to retreat to the sea, relatively unharmed, but his sister, Adam and Eve's daughter, did not. Not only was she killed, she was eaten. They directed their sonar at Loon, knowing that she was your wife and knowing that their stunned sonar could kill her. They admit this much. However, they knew of only one thing, that unless they made an example of your wife, your tribe would not stop their predation of the sea dragons. They would continue to see them as enemies first and food second.
Alter paused, reading the expression of one who. His eyes were searching the blackness of the room as if demons were speaking to him from every corner.
Why do you tell me this story?
It is not a story, it is a set of facts.
They killed my wife because we killed their daughter.
You not only killed her, you ate her, for food. There is no greater disrespect for their kind. They detest you to such a degree that they are only contemplating an agreement to stem what they see as an all-out war between you and them. They believe that they would annihilate you for the simple reason that they have better weapons.
Alter's tone was solemn and spoken in a half-whisper. One who remained deep in thought.
I knew about the hunt of the sea dragons. I did approve of it, but it was before I knew of their intelligence, their motives, their...
Weapons?
Alter finished his sentence. One who sighed.
We killed their daughter?
It was a rhetorical question that Alter let hang in the air like an unconscious confession.
As I said before, you have 3 questions.
We are savages, there is no denying that. It is in our nature to be predators. None of us are fat, and we eat only once a week, the bare minimum. We are not greedy predators.
He shook his head.
I do not know how to apologize for the death of their daughter. I wish I knew the words. I was ready for revenge, and now I'm uncertain of what question even to ask.
While one who spoke, he could hear the sonar language of Alter and the sea dragons like parallel communique on a different frequency. They were translating his words in real time, through the stone walls, across the fire's flames to the ears of the sea dragons.
You're translating my every word? These are not my questions.
Your reaction is what they are most interested in. They are less interested in your 3 questions.
Alter bobbed her head for emphasis.
Then I will give you my reaction.
One who announced.
Perhaps a bit of warning would have been helpful. They could have warned us that they were going to encroach on our lands, arise from the sea, and set up their camps on the shores of where we dream at night, next to the forests in which we hunt rabbits and deer. They could have warned us that their intentions were to only settle with 2 of their kind, and that they would only need a small fraction of our lands. They could have warned us that they had weapons that we were defenseless to. They could have warned us that despite appearing as slow-moving, fatted creatures of the sea, they were not unlike us with families and tribes.
In the dim light, one who thought he saw Alter raise a hand.
And how would they have warned you when their language is so different from yours?
Alter asked. One, who shook his head and closed his eyes. His head went down, nearly resting on his chest.
I don't know. All I know is there are only 2 of them and thousands of us. Their weapons might kill some of us, but we will prevail as we swarm this camp with our superior numbers. We may be defenseless to their weapons, but we have the strength of numbers, and numbers win. In the end, they are the determining factor. So if it is war they desire, then we will accept. I cannot see a path to peace given our short history of killing one another, of not speaking the same language, of not having the same customs, of not having the same objects of desire.
What are your questions?
Alter interrupted.
What do they propose we do with our negotiations?
He chuckled after he spoke as if implying they were so off the rails that the question sounded ridiculous, and in a way, he wished he could revoke it. Nonetheless, it was too late. The high-pitched tones crackled through the air. After a short while, Alter cleared her throat.
They suggest we meet again, this time with the dragon Obsidian. They would like you, Obsidian, and Soin present and no one else. They will be there at twilight tonight, and they will come from the sea. No other werewolves can be present, or they will not venture from the sea to the beach. If that happens, they will assume you have no intention to negotiate, and they will have no choice but to declare war.
Understood.
One who answered.
I have my second question.
He paused, sorting out the right words.
Why did they evolve this ability to stun at such a great distance with such accuracy?
Alter shifted in her sitting position as if it would help her to shift languages.
In their ancient history, they were once air dragons, but the land was harsh and food sources were scarce. The sea, however, had an abundance of creatures, and so they evolved themselves. At first, they ate dead fish that washed up on the shores. Later, they would dive from the air and catch them. In that process of diving, some of their kind learned how to breathe underwater for a short time. However, their wings were hindrances to being able to swim fast enough to catch food, and their fire-breathing ability obviously was no longer useful underwater. So, one group decided to eat only vegetation, and the other group developed their sonar capability to such an extent that they could momentarily stun their prey and swoop in to catch it before it woke up.
She paused and took a deep breath.
Like everything the sea dragons do, it evolves quickly, and the sonar stun was evolving so quickly that food became plentiful. They became fat. It was no longer easy to leave the water, so they evolved into sea dragons. They have lived like this for millions of years, and now, just in recent times, there have been a handful of sea dragons capable of living on the land, but still, their wings are not strong enough to raise them into the air for more than a few seconds. They did not know, with any certainty, that their sonar stun would kill your kind. Perhaps when it is used out of the water, it is more powerful. Or perhaps werewolves are simply more sensitive to its effects than fish.
One, who crossed his lanky arms over his chest.
My next question is for you and not them. It does not count as my final question. Agreed?
Alter nodded, remaining silent, waiting.
Do you believe everything they say?
I have known my clients for 2 days. In that time, I have not found them to speak lies or untruths to me.
That wasn't my question.
One who countered.
I asked if you believe them or not.
I do not.
One who looked up in surprise. He tried to catch Alter's eyes, but the darkness covered them.
Why not?
They have biases like everyone else. They see their reality clearly, but another's reality is hazy and, in comparison, irrelevant to theirs. Isn't that how we all live?
Do you believe they killed my wife by accident?
He whispered.
No.
Are there really only 2 of them that can stay on land?
That is what I have observed in the span of 2 days.
Is meeting them a wise course of action given our lack of trust?
When the alternative is a declaration of war against an unknown adversary, I think meetings are the only wise course, even if you have meetings for 100 years before you find an agreeable solution.
One who flashed a smile at her comment. My final question to you, who killed my wife, Adam or Eve?
It was Eve.
He snorted. He looked in between the stones.
Is she the smaller one?
Alter tipped her head.
Yes.
Your honesty is refreshing.
He nodded to Alter.
My next question is my final one for the sea dragons, and then I will leave.
He paused, taking a deep breath.
Do they consider the deaths of their daughter and my wife equivalent? That is to say, that the scales of justice are balanced. We are even.
The tones and syncopation were suddenly more dramatic, a kind of urgency in them. When it was done, Alter sighed, staying quiet for a while.
They are not sure,
she finally said, her tone sober.
In their mind, their daughter is worth 10,000 werewolves, and they presume you believe the exact inverse. In a way, they see the negotiations are now on a level playing field. So, yes, they feel a greater balance has been achieved. They believe this balance will improve our negotiations.
They think that by killing my wife, the negotiations will improve.
Alter nodded.
Yes.
Then they truly do not understand our kind.
One who stood and began to walk to the door, the same door that Alter had used.
You cannot leave yet,
She said.
And why not?
They have a question for you.
He shrugged, staring at Alter like a challenger.
Do you believe in a higher power?
You mean a god?
No, they are very specific in their terminology. It is... Maybe it's not higher, maybe it's more like, I don't really know. It's more like invisible, yet I'm always watching through you.
It's a god, no matter what qualities you apply to it, and the answer is yes, of course. We don't talk about it, we don't pray to it. We don't pretend to know it. Or what it is, where it is, why it is, how it is. We just know it exists because how could it be otherwise?
He paused. His arms went out like tree branches.
All of this just happens? It all just falls together in some magical creation and interaction?
He leaned forward, his voice suddenly composed.
Why do they care if we believe in a god?
The high-pitched language fired away in a barrage of staccato sound similar to the sound of ice breaking on a lake in the early spring. He was still standing, waiting for his answer, but not sure if he cared.
They say it is because if you believe in the larger plan, the design of one who is all, you must see that war is a waste. It gives them hope that negotiation can be found.
Well, when they killed my loon for the sake of retribution, for something she had no responsibility for, they should abandon their hope, whether we believe in a god or not. There is nothing abstract about an innocent murder. If they were truly believers themselves, at the very least, they should have killed me.
But wasn't their daughter also innocent?
Alter reminded him. One who left through the door, but before the door closed, he screeched over his shoulder.
You've exceeded your quota of questions.
Alter ran after him.
Will you be there tonight, at the beach?
There was only the sound of sonar wafting in the night air like some disembodied sound from another world. Alter sighed. She knew better than to follow him, even though she knew where he was going.